Hello, today I'd like to show you how to make a little raw edge heart, and I've used some pinking shears, which are zigzag scissors, to trim around the edge. So to make these little hearts, and you can make them all different shapes and sizes, and of course it doesn't have to be a heart, but I've made hearts. I've used some freezer paper, cut out shapes of the heart shape that I'm going to use. I've got some fabric and I've got some batting. Now the batting I've used is the Hobbs Cotton Poly 80/20 fusible batting. I find that's really easy to work with for this sort of project. And of course my pinking shears. I've got some buttons out of Grandma's button box, and I have some polyfill which we'll just use a little bit of, and I have some jute string which I've used for my little dangly bits, but of course you might want to use something a little bit nicer, some ribbon or nice cord, but today I've done that. So freezer paper, fabric, batting, polyfill, some buttons and some pinking shears, and a sewing machine and an iron. So I'm going to start off. I've cut some fabric a bit larger than my shape. I'm going to make the large heart. I've cut the fabric a little bit larger all round than my freezer paper shape, and I've cut the batting the same size as the fabric. So I'm going to start off ironing my fabric onto the batting, both pieces. So 2 pieces of batting and 2 pieces of fabric. And then I'm going to iron my freezer paper shape. Now you can re-iron freezer paper. It's not only a single use, you can use it more than once. So centre that so that there's a gap all the way around the shape, and iron that onto one of the pieces of fabric. And now I'm going to lay those right sides together, and I'm going to take that to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew around. Now what I'm going to do is sew around just right outside the freezer paper, so I'm using that as my stitching line, but I'm going to start right down here near the point and come all the way around and stop up here so that there's a gap left along the straight of a heart. So whatever size your heart, if you want to fill it so that it's a little bit puffy like this one, you need to leave yourself a little gap along the straight edge bit. So now I'm going to start sewing that around. So somewhere down near the point, 1/2 inch or so up from the point, not right at the point. Got a lock off stitch. If you've got a needle down, it's really good because it helps you pivot at the point. Just carefully following that heart shape on the outside. Don't sew into the freezer paper, just next to it. But this is a really good way of getting shape onto your fabric without having to draw it and things. Okay, so now I'm coming back to the straight areas, and I'd like to leave myself a couple of inches of a gap. So I'm going to just lock off the threads again, take that out of the sewing machine, trim off those threads. And now if I'm going to fill it so that it's a little bit puffy like this one, I could cut it out now, but I actually have found that it's easier to fill it. I can take the freezer paper off, I can save that to use again. I found it easier to fill it before I do the cutting. So I've got that gap there, so I can just pop in. Now you don't need a lot of filling, and just put in a little bit at a time and just push it in a little bit. Don't push it in too hard. We're not trying to make these a really hard shape, it's just a little bit of puffiness. This sort of batting is really good, but it's not a puffy batting, so this really just helps fill it out a little bit. So just some little bits in there. And as I said, don't overfill it. You don't want to make it hard on yourself. It just gives it a little bit of bounce. And so now I'm going to go back to the sewing machine, and I'm going to join that line up there. So just make sure that your filling is pushed inside there so that you can get that under the sewing machine. And because there's not a lot of batting, this just filling, this just sort of flattens down as you hold it there. Just drawing that up. It's only a straight line. You can probably see. If you find that you can't see where you're going, you could draw a line on and pop a pin in, but I haven't found it necessary to do that. Okay. So now that's a bigger heart, which I'm now going to trim, but at the same time I'm just going to make another little one. Now I'm not going to fill the little one. I've made a little one here, and I haven't filled it. I think when they're just little like that, they're kind of cute flat. So this one we just sew all the way around. We don't have to stop and leave that gap at all. These are really cute. These would make great little additives on a parcel if you're doing little gifts, or you could put a pin on the back and make a little brooch. You could just do pretty much anything with these. Could make a nice bunting with hearts hanging from it. Right, so I've stitched all the way around on that one. I haven't left any gap. I'll pull my paper off, and my heart shape is just nicely quilted on that. So that's really good. So then with my pinking shears, now these have got zigzag blades if you're not familiar with pinking shears. And which then cut that nice little zigzaggy edge for you. Now when you cut that around, cut somewhere around about 1/4 of an inch away from where you've sewn. You don't want to get in too close, and you don't want to get away too far. So all the way around. When you come to the point, the valley in here, just swivel it around and just keep cutting. And these pinking shears are quite fun. You can see you get this nice zigzaggy edge. And I'll just quickly cut around the puffy one. That's just the same thing, it's just that it's bigger. Takes me a bit longer. And I'm going to just decorate them with a little bit of string to hang with, and I'm going to sew a little button on. You could do something a little bit more elaborate if you like, but I was just after that simple, fun project. Great for using up little bits and pieces of leftover fabric and batting. And if you haven't got any polyfill like I've used for the stuffing, you can just tease out some leftover batting bits. That works just as well. So that's the big heart. Now when I pop the string on, I've actually, because I've used this jute string, it's fairly coarse but kind of cute, and I've actually just machined that on with the sewing machine. I just pop that so that I've got a lot better, I don't know, 1/2 inch or so down beyond. So I'm just going to lay that on there, and I'm going to sew in that valley where the stitching is. I'm just going to sew that on there on the sewing machine, just backwards and forwards a couple of times, just to hold that there. You could do that bit by hand, or if you were doing a nice bit of ribbon, that would be fine to do it by hand, but I'm doing the quick and easy today. Let's trim off your threads. And you could leave it like that, but I'm going to sew a button on because I think it's kind of nice. I'm sure you know how to sew a button on, but I'll just do it quickly for you so you see the whole process. So I'm just going to, I've got a knot in my thread. I'm going to go in from the front, pretty much where I've done the sewing, right through to the back, so that that knot end is going to sit underneath the button. Now you could put a button either side if you wanted to, but I'm just doing the one side today. And bring your needle back up again, and now thread your button on, and backwards and forwards, probably so that there's 3 stitches. I've got double thread in my needle here, and I'm probably going to go 3 times. So that was 1, this is number 2. Don't catch your loop. And 3. And then I'm just going to tie that off on the back. And it may be just slightly untidy, but I don't think it's too bad on the back, and especially if you sew that second button on, that would cover all that, but it's a little bit more fiddly to sew a button either side. Tie my thread off, and then I just run that inside through that stuffing a little bit and bring the needle out so that the end's not cut off short. And I can just trim that end there, and there I have my little heart on a string with the raw edges, with the zigzaggy edge from the pinking shears. And I had so much fun doing these that I got very, very carried away, and I've made a whole mountain of them here. And don't they just look gorgeous just to hang somewhere, or you could spread them out separately to do different things with them. But I've just had so much fun, and the different fabrics are just great. I love these fabrics with the writing and music and things on, and I just think they would be just lovely little additives on a parcel, or just a little gift on their own to let somebody know that you care for them. You could make a little bunting. There's just endless possibilities that you could do with hearts like that, and as you can see, quick and easy to make. Thank you.